My son brought a lawyer to take my house. Then he threw a DNA test on my table and said, "You were never my father. I remember the toast burning before I remember my son's face." That is the strange thing about betrayal. Your mind keeps the stupid details. The smoke alarm chirping once, then giving up like it was tired of me too. Coffee going cold in my hand. My left slipper half off my heel. The little butter knife on the counter with crumbs stuck to it because I had been too lazy to rinse it. Then my son walked into my kitchen with a lawyer, and suddenly the whole morning had teeth. He did not knock. That was the first insult. Nolan used the spare key I had given him 15 years earlier, back when I still believed a son should always have a way into his father's home. By the end of that month, I changed the locks, rewrote my will, exposed a property fraud ring, watched my son lose the business I had saved 3 times, and found a tin box under the laundry room floor that my dead wife had hidden from me. But that morning, I was just an old man standing near the toaster in slippers, trying not to burn breakfast of twice. My name is Arthur Whitaker. I was 73 years old. My left knee sounded like a bowl of Rice Krispies whenever the weather changed. I kept a magnifying glass beside the newspaper. Sometimes I walked into the pantry and forgot whether I came in for coffee filters, aspirin, or the reason I was still alive. But I still remembered what mattered. I remembered the sound my wife Eleanor made when she laughed at her own jokes. I remembered the hospital room where she died. I remembered the second mortgage I took to rescue my son's company. I remembered the smell of rain on the night we hid a frightened young woman in our laundry room 35 years earlier. And I remembered the name Mara Bell, a name buried so deep inside that house, my son had grown up walking over it without knowing he was stepping on a grave. Until that Monday, Nolan came in first, 47 years old, handsome in the polished, expensive way men become when other people keep paying for their mistakes. He wore the charcoal suit I bought him after his business almost folded for the first time. Behind him came his wife, Vanessa, all sharp cheekbones, cream coat, and perfume that smelled like ambition trying to pass as flowers. Behind Vanessa came a young lawyer with a leather folder and the nervous eyes of a man who had just realized family law included families. My granddaughter Grace stood near the back door in her school uniform, one hand frozen on her backpack strap. Grace was 16, old enough to recognize cruelty, too young to know what to do when it came from both parents at once. On the counter behind her sat the digital picture frame Vanessa had given me last Christmas. I hated that thing. It changed photographs every 10 seconds like it had commitment issues. One minute Eleanor was smiling at the beach. The next my old police academy photo appeared. Then Grace at age 6 missing 2 front teeth. Vanessa had insisted I keep it in the kitchen. "So you don't feel alone," she had said. That was kind of her. I should have known kindness from Vanessa usually came with a battery and a hidden purpose. Nolan looked at me across my own kitchen, not like a son, not even like an enemy. He looked at me like I was an old appliance that had stopped justifying its space. "Dad," he said, soft and careful, the way people speak to hospitals, dogs, and loaded guns. "We need to talk about your capacity." That was the word he chose, not loneliness, not grief, not age, capacity. I took one sip of coffee. Cold, of course. Vanessa placed her handbag on my kitchen counter as if she owned the granite too. "Arthur," she said, "this is going to be difficult, but it's necessary." Arthur. She only called me Arthur when she wanted to remind me I was not really her family. The lawyer sat at my table, the same oak table where Nolan had learned multiplication, the same table where Eleanor used to roll dough for Sunday biscuits, the same table where Grace had once spilled orange juice and cried like she had personally flooded the state of Ohio. Now a stranger opened a folder on it and slid papers toward me. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, "your son and daughter-in-law have concerns regarding your ability to manage your property, finances, and medical decisions." I looked down. Petition for conservatorship. My name sat there in black ink. Arthur James Whitaker, widower, retired, possible cognitive impairment. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because I had spent enough years around dirty men to recognize clean language. Nobody says steal when they can say protect. Nobody says trap when they can say concern. Nobody says old fool when they can say possible cognitive impairment. I looked at Nolan. You brought a lawyer into my kitchen. His jaw tightened. It didn't have to be like this. Cowards love that sentence. It lets them pretend the road walked itself. Vanessa opened a second folder. We have documentation. Of course she did. Vanessa loved documentation. Printouts, screenshots, bank notices, medical notes. She stacked paper the way nervous generals stack sandbags. She laid them out one by one. A missed utility notice from February. A printout about memory decline. A doctor's letter from a man who had met me for exactly 12 minutes. Bank statements with 3 highlighted withdrawals. A photograph of my medicine cabinet. And then she placed down a picture of my old safe. The safe was open. Inside it, on the top shelf, sat a brown envelope marked with one word, Mara. My hands did not shake. I was proud of that. My heart, though, went cold enough to hurt. Vanessa noticed. Of course she noticed. Women like Vanessa do not miss weakness. They collect it and label it for later. We found that in your study, she said. Nolan looked at me with disgust that did not belong to him. You were hiding money from us. I studied his face. From us? He rubbed his thumb against his wedding ring. He always did that when he was lying. From the family, he said. The family, the holy flag under which most private thefts march. I looked at Grace. Her face had gone pale. Too pale. That was when I knew. You opened my safe, I said. Grace's eyes filled instantly. Nolan stepped forward. Don't blame her. I kept my eyes on my granddaughter. Grace? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Vanessa sighed. She was worried about you. We all were. No, I said. Let her answer. Nolan snapped. Dad, enough. I looked at him. Slowly. He took half a step back. Good. I might have been old, but I had not forgotten how to make a room remember who I was, Grace whispered. Dad told me you kept Grandma's letters in there. Nolan closed his eyes. He said he wanted to make a memory book for your birthday, she said. He said you would be happy if I helped. Her voice cracked. That was the first wound of the morning that truly bled. Not the petition, not the lawyer, not the open safe. The fact that my son had used his daughter's love as a crowbar. I nodded once. Thank you for telling me. Vanessa clicked her tongue. Arthur, don't turn this into a performance. I smiled. She did not like that. At my age, a smile can do more damage than shouting. People expect rage from an old man. They do not expect patience. I picked up the petition and read the first page, then the second, then the signature line. Nolan Whitaker. My only son had signed a paper saying I was too broken to run my own life. Nolan, I said, did you read all of this? He looked toward Vanessa. That answered me. Vanessa said, he read what mattered. I nodded. Dangerous sentence. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Whitaker, if you cooperate voluntarily, this can remain private. Nolan can assume temporary financial authority while the court evaluates. No, I said. He blinked. No? No. Vanessa leaned forward. This house is too much for you. The taxes, the repairs, the stairs, the bills. You don't need a place this size anymore. Nolan found courage in her voice. She's right, Dad. It's not practical. I stared at him. Practical. He swallowed. Then he said the first thing that made me want to throw my coffee mug. Mom would have wanted us to be practical. There it was. He used his dead mother like a notary stamp. The kitchen became very still. Even Vanessa knew he had stepped somewhere dangerous. I placed my mug on the counter. Slowly. That mug had survived 20 years, 3 moves, and 1 dishwasher accident. It deserved better than being thrown at my son's head. Your mother, I said. Scrubbed blood out of the laundry room floor in this house so a terrified woman could have her baby without being dragged back to the man who beat her. Nolan stared at me. Grace stopped breathing for a second. Vanessa's face changed. Just a little, but enough. The lawyer looked up from his notes. What are you talking about? Nolan asked. I did not answer. Because before I could pull out the red folder, my son reached into his jacket and threw something else onto the table. A white envelope. Thin, clinical, ugly. It slid across the oak and stopped by to the conservatorship petition. Nolan's eyes had gone wet, but not soft. Angry wet, the worst kind. You want to talk about Mom, he said. Fine. Let's talk about what else she lied about. I looked down at the envelope. DNA Heritage Laboratory. My kitchen went quiet in a new way. Nolan tapped the envelope with one finger. You don't get to call yourself my father just because you paid the bills, Grace whispered. Dad. He ignored her. For 47 years, you let me think I owed you gratitude, discipline, respect, everything. Then Vanessa found this. Vanessa lowered her eyes in a beautiful performance of reluctance. I had seen better acting at church Christmas plays. Nolan's voice broke. You were never my father. There are sentences that do not hit the ear. They hit the bone. He did not look like a man begging the test to be false. That was what hurt. He looked relieved to have permission to hate me. I looked at the DNA test, then at my son, then at Vanessa. And there it was. Not fear, not guilt. Calculation. She had expected rage. She had expected denial. She had expected me to collapse into old man confusion. Instead, I asked one question. Who gave you that? Nolan blinked. What? Who gave you that test? Vanessa stepped in. That isn't the issue. I looked at her. It is always the issue when poison comes in a clean bottle. Nolan slammed his palm on the table. Answer me. I raised you, I said. That's not what I asked. No, I said. It is what matters. His face twisted. You don't get to do that. You don't get to hide behind being noble. I leaned forward. I changed your diapers, buried your dog, paid your debts, sat beside your mother while she begged God to make you kinder than me. My throat caught there. I hated that it did. I coughed once and looked down at the toast because burnt bread suddenly seemed less embarrassing than my own face. Then I finished. If blood is all you think fatherhood is, then Vanessa has made a smaller man out of you than I ever feared. That landed. Not enough, but it landed. Vanessa picked up the DNA envelope and pushed it toward the lawyer. This is relevant to motive and family trust dynamics. I almost laughed. Family trust dynamics, I said. That sounds expensive. The lawyer did not laugh. He looked like he wanted to become a dentist. Dentists, at least, get to hurt people with clearer consent. Grace stared at the DNA envelope like it might bite. I reached beneath the stack of newspapers on the sideboard and pulled out a red folder. Vanessa's eyes followed it too quickly. She knew. Not everything, but enough to be afraid. I placed the folder on the table. Before we discuss my capacity, my house, or your laboratory fairy tale, I said, we should discuss your wife's research. Nolan looked at Vanessa. What research? She laughed once, thin and sharp. Don't let him deflect. Confused people do this. They turn simple facts into stories. Stories, I said, are facts with witnesses. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of deeds, bank letters, trust amendments, screenshots, notarized statements, and one sealed affidavit. The lawyer leaned forward. Nolan frowned. Vanessa stopped smiling. I slid the first document across the table. The lawyer read it. His face changed. That tiny professional shift that says a man has just realized his client handed him a live grenade. This property is held in trust, he said. Nolan blinked. What trust? The Whitaker Bell Residential Trust. Vanessa's mouth tightened. Nolan turned to me. Bell? I did not answer immediately. I looked around the kitchen. The cracked blue tile Eleanor picked in 1991. The window above the sink where she grew basil in chipped white pots. The pantry wall where Grace's height marks climbed in pencil. The ugly brass light fixture Eleanor refused to replace because she said ugly things deserved one loyal friend. This house was not a prize, it was a witness. Mara Bell, I said, was the woman your mother and I hid in this house before you were born? Grace sat down slowly. Nolan looked confused. Vanessa looked angry. That was how I knew the name had landed. Mara was 24, I said. Pregnant. Bruised. Running from a man named Silas Voss. The lawyer's head lifted. Vanessa's eyes moved before she could stop them. You know that name, I said to her. I know many names. Yes, I said. That has always been your problem. Nolan snapped. What is going on? I looked at him. Your wife knows exactly why this house matters. Vanessa slapped her palm lightly on the table. This is ridiculous. No, I said. This is old. I took out a black and white photograph. A younger version of me stood beside Eleanor in this same kitchen. Between us stood Mara Bell, thin as a matchstick, holding a newborn wrapped in a yellow blanket. I placed it on the table. Grace leaned forward. Her tears had stopped. Fear had become attention. Mara worked for Silas Voss, I said. He was a developer, rich, connected, the kind of man who called theft an opportunity and got invited to charity dinners for it. Vanessa looked away. I kept going. He used shell companies to take homes from elderly people, fake liens, false repair invoices, predatory loans, conservatorships. He would find a greedy relative, a lazy doctor, and a hungry lawyer, and suddenly an old widow became incompetent on paper. The young lawyer went pale. I glanced at him. No offense. He said nothing. Mara copied files, I said. She planned to testify. She came to me because I had been a police officer. Nolan frowned. You left the force because of your knee. That is what your mother told people. What really happened? I looked down at my hands. The old shame was still there. Age had not softened it. It had only taught it manners. I took money once. No one moved. Not a fortune. Not enough to change my life. Just enough to ruin it. Voss paid officers to look away. I told myself I was taking money from a rich devil and hurting no one. My voice stayed steady. That cost me more than I expected. Mara proved I was wrong. Grace looked at me like she was seeing a stranger inside her grandfather. Good. Children deserve truth more than comfort. I gave Mara's evidence to a detective I trusted, I said. He handed it back to Voss. The kitchen seemed to shrink. Mara disappeared 3 days before the hearing. Her baby was left on our porch in a basket with that yellow blanket. Eleanor and I protected the child until Mara's aunt could take her. I touched the photograph. Before Mara vanished, she made me promise one thing. If Silas Voss, his blood, his companies, or anyone tied to him ever came for this house, I would not let them take it. Nolan shook his head. What does that have to do with us? I turned to Vanessa. Tell him. She said nothing. I pulled out another document. Crown Ridge Recovery Group, I said. Private property acquisition. Predatory asset management dressed up in a better suit. They sent your wife a draft purchase agreement for this house 8 weeks ago. Nolan stared at Vanessa. What? Vanessa's face hardened. You went through my email? No, I said. My attorney obtained records after someone tried to file a power of attorney using my forged signature. Nolan looked sick. Vanessa looked at the lawyer. The lawyer did not look back at her. Smart boy. I slid the emails toward Nolan. Vanessa had been planning this for almost a year. First, she redirected my property tax notices to Nolan's office. Then she arranged for a doctor I barely knew to write a vague concern letter. Then she pushed Nolan to record every senior moment I had. A misplaced checkbook, a forgotten appointment, a burnt piece of toast. For the record, the toast deserved what happened to it. It had entered that toaster as bread and emerged as evidence against me. Then she contacted Crown Ridge Recovery. Then she helped draft the conservatorship petition. Then she used Grace to open my safe. Then she gave Nolan a DNA test. And then came the detail that changed Vanessa from greedy into something older and uglier. Her maiden name appeared in 3 Crown Ridge shell companies. Vanessa Rourke. Rourke had been her mother's name, and her mother, Elaine Rourke, had worked for Silas Voss before Vanessa was born. I placed the corporate records beside the emails. Your wife didn't stumble into Crown Ridge, I said. She was raised near it. Nolan's face went blank. Vanessa did not move. That was the first time I saw real fear in her. Not fear of prison. Fear of being understood. Elaine Rourke did not just work for Silas Voss, I said. She cleaned his files after Mara vanished. Vanessa grew up believing my house was not a shelter. She grew up hearing it was the place where her family's fortune started bleeding. Vanessa's mouth tightened. I looked at her. You were not just selling the house. You were helping them erase it. She smiled then. Small, ugly. There it is, she said. The old man finally catches up. Nolan stared at her. What does he mean? Vanessa's eyes stayed on me. Sentiment is how old people let valuable things rot. That sentence told me everything. She did not want the house because it was worth money. She wanted it because it remembered. Nolan read the emails. First page. Second page. Then the line that drained his face. Once incapacity is established, family opposition should be manageable. Family opposition, that was me. A father, a grandfather, a man they thought could be managed. Nolan whispered, Vanessa. She did not deny it. That was the thing about Vanessa. She only lied when lying still had profit left in it. When cornered, she became honest in the ugliest way. You were drowning us, she said. Your business was failing again. Your father was sitting on $1 million property and acting like some sentimental old fool. I did what you didn't have the backbone to do. Nolan flinched. You told me this was about protecting him. I told you what you needed to hear. Grace made a sound small, broken. Vanessa turned toward her. And you, don't start crying like you didn't help. The room changed. I felt it in my bones. I looked at Vanessa. You ever put your guilt on that child again, and I will spend what remains of my life making sure every room you enter knows your name before you speak. She laughed, but it shook. You're threatening me. No, I said. Threats are for people who still have choices. The lawyer stood. I think we should pause this conversation. I looked at him. No, counselor. You should listen carefully, because your signature is on a filing built with stolen records, forged documents, a fraudulent medical concern letter, and a DNA report I suspect your clients did not obtain honestly. He froze. I handed him a letter from my attorney. My attorney is filing this afternoon. The bank has frozen unauthorized access attempts. Adult Protective Services has received a packet. So has the State Bar. Vanessa's confidence cracked, not completely, just enough to show the fear underneath. You set us up, she said. No, I said. I watched you finish. Nolan looked at me. Dad. I raised one hand. No. You do not get to sound wounded yet. His mouth closed. You brought a lawyer into my kitchen. His eyes reddened. You used your daughter to open my safe. He looked at Grace. She would not look at him. You signed a paper saying I was too broken to own the walls your mother died inside. I didn't know everything. No, I said. But you knew enough. That was the line that broke him. Not all the way. Men like Nolan rarely break cleanly. They crack and leak excuses. Vanessa grabbed her handbag. We're leaving. I nodded. You are. She reached for the red folder. The lawyer put his hand over it. No, he said quietly. Vanessa stared at him. He did not move. Smart boy after all. Then Grace spoke. Her voice was small, but steady. I recorded it. Everyone turned. Vanessa went still. Nolan's face emptied. Grace held up her phone. I recorded the hallway before I opened the safe. Vanessa did not shout. That would have been easier. She looked at her daughter, calm as ice water, and said, You learned that from me. Grace flinched. That was the cruelest thing Vanessa said all morning. Because part of it was true. Grace had learned to watch from her mother. She had learned to hide fear behind silence. But she had chosen what to do with it. That was the part Vanessa would never understand. Grace's hand shook, but she kept speaking. I thought something was wrong. Mom kept saying Grandpa was selfish. Dad kept saying I had to help the family. But they never talked like that in front of me, unless they wanted something. She swallowed. I heard Mom whisper the word Crown Ridge twice that week. Children remember strange words. Adults think they can bury behind closed doors. She looked at me. I opened your safe, Grandpa, but I didn't open it for them. I opened it because I needed them to say out loud what they were doing. That child, my God, that child had more spine at 16 than half the men I had arrested. Vanessa moved toward the phone. The lawyer stepped between them. Do not, he said. Vanessa stopped. Nolan stared at his daughter like she had become a stranger. No, not a stranger, a witness. Grace tapped the screen. Vanessa's voice filled the kitchen. Just get the combination from him. Smile if you have to. Cry if you need to. Old people love feeling needed. Then Nolan's voice. Are you sure this won't hurt, Grace? Vanessa answered. Children forgive when adults control the story. Grace stopped the recording. The silence afterward was so heavy I could hear the refrigerator hum. Vanessa looked at Nolan. Are you coming? Nolan did not move. For the first time in years, my son seemed to understand that he had not married ambition. He had married appetite. That did not make him innocent. Only late. Vanessa left alone. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the glass. Grace flinched. Nolan sat down like his legs had forgotten him. "I'm sorry," he said. I looked at him for a long time. I had waited years to hear those words over something that mattered. When they finally came, they sounded too small for the room. "I know," I said. Hope came into his face so fast it embarrassed both of us, and I hated how quickly some old part of me wanted to feed it. "That does not repair anything," I said. "It died there." The lawyer excused himself and went outside to make several career-saving phone calls. That left the three of us. Nolan reached toward Grace. "Sweetheart?" She stepped back, not far, just enough. That was worse. He saw it, so did I. "Grace," I said gently, "go upstairs and pack a bag." Nolan looked up. "What?" "She's staying with me tonight. She's my daughter, and I am the man whose safe you tricked her into opening." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Grace looked at me. "You want me here, only if you want to be here." She nodded without hesitation. That broke Nolan more than any judge could have. When she went upstairs, Nolan and I sat in the kitchen. The crow outside made noise in the maple tree. Small things continued because the world is rude that way. Nolan stared at the DNA envelope. "You didn't even deny it," he said. I looked at him. "I don't argue with paper until I know who paid for the ink." He rubbed his face. "She said Mom had hidden it." "Of course she did. She said she found the result in an old file. Vanessa found exactly what she needed exactly when she needed you angry. That should have impressed you less." He winced. "Are you my father?" I watched him. For a moment, I saw the boy who once fell asleep on my chest during a thunderstorm. The boy who cried when his dog died. The boy I had rescued so many times he began to think rescue was proof of his importance. "I am the man who raised you," I said. "The rest can wait for better evidence." He started to cry, quietly, like he was ashamed of the sound. I wanted to touch his shoulder. I kept my hands folded because if I touched him, I knew I might start rescuing him again. Grace came down with a backpack and a small duffel bag. She had also brought the stuffed rabbit she pretended not to sleep with anymore. Nolan saw it. That hurt him. "Good. Some pain is educational. Go home," I said. "Dad, go home. Speak to your own lawyer. Do not contact Grace tonight unless she contacts you first. She's my daughter." "Yes," I said. "Try earning that sentence tomorrow." He left quietly. No slammed door. No final argument. Just a man walking out of the house he had tried to take and realizing the walls had chosen sides. That night, Grace and I ate tomato soup and grilled cheese at the kitchen table. She barely touched hers. Neither did I. I wanted to say something wise. I had nothing. So I buttered another slice of bread and burned that one too. Grace looked at it. I looked at her. "Your grandmother always said I had a gift." "For cooking?" "For proving fire exists." She almost smiled. Almost was enough for that night. Around 9, she asked me the question I had been waiting for. "Grandpa? Yes? Did you really take money from a bad man?" I looked at her, 16 years old. Dragged into a war older than her father. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I thought one small wrong could stay small." She nodded slowly. "But it didn't." "No," I said. "It grew legs. Walked into my kitchen 35 years later, wearing your mother's perfume." She stared at the table. "Is that why you're so mad at Dad?" I thought about lying. Then I thought about Mara Bell. "No," I said. "I'm mad because he used you. I'm hurt because he betrayed me. And I'm ashamed because part of me knows I taught him consequences could be avoided." She looked up. "How?" "By always rescuing him." Her eyes filled again. "Am I like him?" The question cut deeper than anything that morning. I reached across the table and took her hand. "No, but you did something wrong." She nodded, crying now. "You opened my safe. I'm sorry." "I know." I thought I was helping. "That is how many wrong things begin." She cried harder. I let her. There was nothing useful to say for a while. People rush to fill silence because they are afraid pain will get comfortable there. Sometimes pain needs a chair. Then she whispered the sentence that would later destroy Nolan more thoroughly than any court order. "If Dad loved me, why did he teach me how to betray you?" I had no answer, so I held her hand and stayed quiet. The next morning, my attorney arrived at 8 sharp. Her name was Celia Bell. She looked like her mother around the eyes. That still hurt. Celia was Mara Bell's daughter, the baby from the photograph. the baby left on porch in a basket while rain hammered the roof, and Eleanor stood behind me, whispering, "Arthur, we can't give her back to this world." Celia carried a leather briefcase, wore a navy suit, and moved through my kitchen with the calm of someone who had spent her whole life preparing to enter it. Grace was upstairs. I poured coffee. Celia reviewed everything. "Vanessa exposed herself," she said. "Nolan is exposed but less cleanly. The lawyer will cooperate to protect himself. Crownridge will deny knowledge until discovery makes denial expensive." "And Silas Voss's son?" Celia's jaw tightened. "Elliot Voss will not bleed truth until he bleeds money. Then we start with money." She gave me the smallest smile. "You always were practical." "No," I said, "just old. Old is practical if it survives." That sounded like Mara. I did not say so. By noon, Celia filed for emergency injunctive relief. By 2, my bank confirmed 4 unauthorized access attempts. By 3, Nolan's joint accounts with Vanessa were frozen pending fraud review. By 5, Vanessa's credit lines started surfacing like bodies after a flood. She had opened one in Nolan's name, one through his company, one using a signature that looked too much like his and not enough like his hand. By evening, Nolan called me 9 times. I did not answer. Grace did not answer either. That was the first real punishment. Not the frozen money, not the lawyers. Silence from the people he thought would always be reachable. The next morning, Adult Protective Services knocked on my door. 2 women stood on the porch, polite, tired, carrying clipboards. I have always trusted tired professionals more than cheerful ones. Cheerful people either sell insurance or hide bodies, sometimes both. The older woman introduced herself as Ms. Harrow. "We received a report concerning possible elder neglect, coercion, and cognitive impairment." I looked over her shoulder. Across the street, Vanessa sat in her white SUV, pretending not to watch, badly. For a woman who liked paperwork, she had never learned subtlety. I invited them in. They inspected the house. They checked the refrigerator. They asked about medication. They asked if I knew the date. I told her the date, the president, and the name of my pharmacy. Then I told her I could not remember why young people paid $6 for coffee that tasted like regret. She wrote something down. I chose not to ask which part worried her. Then she asked if anyone had pressured me about property or money. Grace appeared at the staircase before I answered. "She did," Grace said. Miss Harrow turned. "Who?" "My mother." I did not stop her. Some truths choose their own time. Grace came downstairs holding her phone. She played the recording again. Vanessa's voice filled the kitchen. "Just get the combination from him. Smile if you have to. Cry if you need to. Old people love feeling needed." Miss Harrow's face hardened. The younger worker stopped writing. Outside, Vanessa's SUV started. Too late. Adult Protective Services may move slowly, but once they start writing, they write like people sharpening knives. That report became our first official witness statement from outside the family. Vanessa had meant to bury me with bureaucracy. Instead, she invited bureaucracy into my kitchen and gave it coffee. I respected the irony. 2 days later, Crownridge sent a man to my house. He arrived in a black sedan, wore a camel-colored coat, and carried no folder. That made him more dangerous than the lawyer. His name was Pierce Alden. He smiled at me from the porch. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm here to discuss a peaceful path forward." Peaceful. Another word thieves like. I opened the screen door halfway. "You selling religion or stealing houses?" His smile twitched. "I represent interested parties. Son, at my age, even my knees are interested parties. Be specific." Grace, listening from the hallway, coughed to hide a laugh. Pierce glanced past me, saw her, and lowered his voice. "This property has become complicated. Your family situation is unfortunate. Crownridge can still make this painless." "There it is," I said. "What?" "The word painless. People only say painless when they brought tools." His eyes cooled. "You are an elderly man standing in the way of substantial value." I nodded. That sounds like something a man says before discovering the elderly man owns a lawyer with better shoes than his. He leaned closer. "At your age, Mr. Whitaker, certainty is a luxury." I smiled. "And at yours, arrogance is usually rented." He handed me a business card. I did not take it. It fell onto the porch between us. That bothered him more than it should have. Good. Small disrespect is seasoning. Tell Elliot Voss, I said, that Maribel's daughter has the old files. His face changed. There. That was the face I had been waiting for. Not confusion. Recognition. Pierce Alden had heard Mara's name before. Then I added, and tell him the house still remembers his father. For the first time, Pierce looked afraid, only for a second. But at my age, seconds are enough. He left. Grace came up beside me. Was that legal? What part? The part where you scared him with a dead woman's name. Perfectly legal, I said. Underrated, but legal. She smiled. That smile mattered. It meant the house was becoming hers in the only way that counted. Not ownership. Memory. Then Vanessa struck back. Of course she did. People like Vanessa do not retreat. They rebrand. She sent Adult Protective Services in the court a video of me from 6 months earlier. In it, I was standing in my kitchen shouting. My fist hit the table. A glass shattered. I looked furious. Unstable. Dangerous. The clip was 18 seconds long. Vanessa claimed it proved cognitive decline and violent outbursts. For about half a day it worked. Nolan called Celia, panicked. Miss Harrow asked to speak with Grace again. The young lawyer from the first meeting sent an email so careful it practically wore a helmet. Then Grace handed Celia the full video. 2 minutes and 49 seconds. The full video showed Vanessa standing just out of frame, telling me Eleanor had died disappointed in me. It showed Nolan doing nothing. It showed Vanessa saying, maybe if you'd been stronger, she would have lived longer. Then it showed me hitting the table. Not proud of it, but no longer ashamed without context. When Celia played the full video in her office, Nolan put his face in his hands. Grace watched him. No tears. That worried me more than crying. Dad, she said quietly, you heard her say that about Grandma. Nolan did not look up. I froze. Grace nodded. You always freeze when Mom hurts someone else. That sentence did more damage than yelling ever could. Then Celia asked Nolan the question that should have saved some small piece of him. Did Vanessa ask Grace to open the safe? Nolan looked at Grace, then at me, then at the floor. His mouth opened. For 1 second, I thought he would choose truth. 1 second is long enough to break an old man's heart twice. Nolan whispered, I don't remember. Grace's face changed, not dramatically, just enough for a child to become older. Celia said nothing. She simply played the hallway recording again. Vanessa's voice, then Nolan's, then the silence after. Nolan closed his eyes. Grace stood up and walked out of the room. That was the day he lost her trust completely. Not because he had lied before, because he lied when the truth was already standing beside him. That night, Nolan came back. It was past midnight. Rain tapped the kitchen window, soft and steady. I had not been sleeping. Old men say they sleep lightly. Mostly, we just lie still and let our memories make noise. I heard a car door close. Then I saw headlights die on the street. Not in the driveway. On the street. That told me enough. I went to the front window and saw Nolan moving across the yard with his coat collar up. He tried the old side door first. Locked. Then he went toward the back porch. I turned on the porch light. He froze like a raccoon caught near a trash can. I opened the door. If you came to apologize, I said, you parked like a thief. His face was wet with rain, or something else. I need the DNA report. No, Dad, please. You are using that word very flexibly tonight. He looked past me, toward the hall that led to my study. I just need to understand what she did. No, I said. You need to control what survives. He flinched. Good. Not because I wanted to hurt him, because the truth had finally found skin. I wasn't going to steal it, he said. You already tried that method in the morning. I admire your schedule, but not your imagination. His jaw tightened. For a second, I saw anger come back into him. Then it vanished. He looked smaller in the rain. I don't know who I am anymore. That one almost got me. Almost. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me so Grace would not hear if she was awake. You are a man who got handed a lie and liked the shape of it. He stared at me. You didn't verify the DNA test because you didn't want the truth, I said. You wanted permission. That is different. A man looking for truth asks questions. A man looking for permission only asks whether the paper says what he already wants to feel. Nolan looked away. Rain ran down his cheek. I wanted it to be true, he whispered. I know, because then I didn't have to feel guilty for hating you. I had no clever line for that. So I let the rain talk for a while. Then I said, go home. He wiped his face. I don't have one. You have a house. Whether you have a home is not my problem tonight. He nodded once. He left without another word. I stood on the porch until his taillights disappeared. Then I went inside and checked the study door. Not because I distrusted him, because I knew him. There is a difference, though it hurts the same. The next morning, Grace noticed mud on the porch. I told her a raccoon had come by. She looked at the footprints. Grandpa. What? That raccoon wears dress shoes, I sighed. Public schools are teaching too much. She did not laugh, but she sat closer to me at breakfast. That counted. The next twist came from the DNA test. Celia did not trust it, neither did I, so she obtained the lab chain of custody. There was no proper chain. The sample had been submitted privately, paid by a consulting company linked to Crown Ridge. Vanessa had told Nolan the comparison sample came from an old envelope of my hair Eleanor, kept in a keepsake box. That sounded sentimental enough to be believable. In reality, the lab file showed the Arthur Whitaker sample belonged to a dead man named Roland Sykes. I knew that name, so did Celia. Roland Sykes had been one of Silas Voss's enforcers. A man who collected debts, broke leases, scared widows, and once stood on my porch at midnight, asking for Maribel. Nolan's DNA had been compared against a dead criminal and presented as proof that I was not his father. It was not just fake. It was designed to injure. When Celia told Nolan, he vomited into her trash can. I wish I could say I felt sorry for him. I did not. Not then. He had brought wolves to the door. Now he was shocked by teeth. But the ugliest piece was still waiting. Grace found it. Of course she did. Children see what adults hide, because no one thinks to hide from them properly. She returned to Nolan's house with a court-approved officer to collect clothes, school books, and the stuffed rabbit she had suddenly admitted was emotionally important, which was 16-year-old language for I need it or I might fall apart. Inside Vanessa's home office, tucked behind a framed wedding photo, Grace found a plastic document sleeve. Inside was a medical directive. My medical directive, at least, that was what it claimed to be. It stated that if I suffered a stroke, fall, or cognitive episode, Nolan would assume immediate authority over all medical decisions. That was ugly, but not surprising. Then Grace saw the second page, witness signature, Eleanor Whitaker, my dead wife, dated 9 months earlier. Eleanor had been dead for 5 years. Grace called me from the officer's phone. Grandpa, she said, and her voice sounded like broken glass. Grandma signed something. The room around me went silent. I did not understand at first, then I understood too well. Vanessa had forged my dead wife's name, not just to steal my house, to control my body if something happened to me. That was the moment I stopped feeling old. Old is slow. Old is careful. What I felt then was ancient, and ancient things do not hurry, because they know the ground will open eventually. Celia filed an emergency motion within the hour. The forged medical directive changed everything. It proved intent. It proved planning. It proved Vanessa was not merely opportunistic. She was preparing for my illness, my silence, or my death. Nolan saw the document in Celia's office and went white. Then Celia showed him a text Vanessa had sent him. If something happens before the hearing, the medical paper gives us breathing room. Nolan whispered. I didn't know she forged Mom's name. Grace looked at him. But you knew there was a paper. He closed his eyes. There it was again. Not everything. Enough. That weekend, Grace found the floorboard. Not because she was looking for a clue, because life does not arrange itself that neatly. She was helping me mop the laundry room after the old washer coughed out half a gallon of water and made a sound I can only describe as a dying tractor. The laundry room had always been the ugliest room in the house. Gray floor, old sink, one narrow window, a shelf full of detergent bottles, rags, and things I had been meaning to throw away since 2004. The floorboard under the old laundry sink had always sat a little crooked. Eleanor used to say the house had one bad tooth. Grace noticed it because grief makes children notice things adults step over. "Grandpa," she said, "why is that board different?" I looked. Then I stopped breathing for a second. The board was darker than the others. Not much, just enough. I had seen that room 1,000 times. I had walked over that board with baskets of towels, boxes of Christmas lights, and my wife's winter coats after she died. Never once had I lifted it. Grace fetched a screwdriver. My hands were not steady, so she did most of the prying. Under the board was a small tin box wrapped in oilcloth. For a while, neither of us touched it. It is a strange feeling. Finding a secret inside your own home and knowing the dead put it there because they trusted the house more than they trusted you. Finally, I opened it. Inside were 3 things: a roll of film, a folded ledger page, and a note in Eleanor's handwriting. "Arthur, if you ever need to prove she was real." I sat down on the laundry room floor. Not gracefully. At 73, getting down to the floor is a decision. Getting back up is a negotiation. Grace sat beside me. "Is that from Grandma?" "Yes." "Do you know?" "No." That answer hurt more than I expected. Eleanor had hidden it from me. Not because she did not love me, because she knew I might try to protect everyone by burying the truth again. My wife knew me. That is marriage, I suppose. Being loved by someone who can still see exactly where you are dangerous. Celia had the film developed and the ledger authenticated. The photographs showed Silas Voss with 2 city officials and a police captain I recognized too well. The ledger page had names, payment dates, and property addresses. One address was mine. One line had my old badge number next to a payment I had spent 35 years trying to pretend had no face. Grace saw me staring at it. She did not ask if I was okay. Smart girl. Instead, she brought me coffee and set it beside my hand. It was too hot. I drank it anyway. Sometimes pain needs something to compete with. The court hearing came 3 weeks later. Vanessa arrived in a cream suit, dressed for innocence. Nolan arrived separately, dressed for a funeral. Grace sat between me and Celia. Celia did not throw everything at the judge at once. Good lawyers do not dump evidence. They build stairs. Celia built 3 that morning, and Vanessa had to fall down every one of them. The first wave was about the kitchen. The lawyer from that morning testified. He admitted Vanessa supplied most of the materials. He admitted he had not verified the medical letter. He admitted. Nolan seemed uncertain but signed anyway. Vanessa stared at him like she wanted to peel his skin off. Then Ms. Harrow testified. Then Grace's hallway recording played. Children forgive when adults control the story. The judge's face did not change. That was how I knew she was angry. Judges are like old cats. The stiller they become, the more likely someone is about to bleed. The second wave was about the pattern. The bank representative testified about unauthorized access attempts. The doctor's office manager admitted the cognitive concern letter had been drafted without a full evaluation. Celia introduced 14 similar letters connected to other elderly homeowners who had later lost property through Crown Ridge-related acquisitions. 14. Same phrasing, same vague concern, same pattern. The doctor's letter said, "I showed signs of confusion." I agreed. I was deeply confused why a man who spent 12 minutes with me thought he had met my brain. Celia also played the full version of Vanessa's edited video. The room watched Vanessa use Eleanor's death like a blade, then watched me hit the table. Context is a funny thing. Without it, a man looks dangerous. With it, the person holding the camera does. Then Celia asked Nolan, under oath, whether Vanessa had involved Grace in opening my safe. Nolan sat there with his hands folded so tightly, his knuckles whitened. He looked at Grace, then at me, then at the judge. "I don't remember," he said. Grace closed her eyes. That was all. No tears, no drama, just a door shutting inside a child. Celia played the recording, Vanessa's voice, then Nolan's, then the silence after. The third wave was about the dead. Celia paused before showing the medical directive. For the first time that morning, she looked less like a lawyer and more like Mara Bell's daughter. The judge waited. Nobody rushed her. Even courtrooms know when the dead are about to speak. Then Celia showed the development prospectus. The house was listed as Parcel 12. my kitchen, Eleanor's basil window, Grace's pencil marks on the pantry wall, Mara's blood on a laundry room floor no one could see anymore. Parcel 12. Crownridge planned to demolish the house and build luxury senior residences. They had already chosen a name, Bellevue Manor. Bellevue. Mara Bell's name turned into branding. When Celia showed me that, the room blurred. Vanessa had not even known enough to be ashamed. Or maybe she had. Maybe cruelty was part of the design. Celia's voice changed only slightly, but I heard Mara in it. The proposed development name uses the surname Bell. That is the surname of my mother, Mara Bell, whose original evidence connected the Voss family to property theft schemes involving elderly victims. Vanessa's attorney jumped up. The judge let him speak for 12 seconds, then stopped him. Crownridge had not only touched my house, it had touched Celia's dead mother. Then Celia presented the false DNA test, the lab payment, the broken chain of custody, the sample tied to Roland Sykes. Nolan sat with both hands over his mouth. The judge looked at Vanessa. Mrs. Whitaker, did you provide this report to your husband? Vanessa whispered to her attorney. He whispered back. She did not answer. That was answer enough. Then came Eleanor's forged signature. My wife's name appeared on the screen, written by another woman's hand. I had not cried when Nolan brought the petition. I had not cried when I saw my safe open. I had not cried when Grace asked why her father taught her betrayal. But seeing Eleanor's name used like that made my throat close. Grace reached for my hand. I took it. Celia spoke very quietly. Eleanor Whitaker had been deceased for 5 years when this document was allegedly signed. The courtroom became so silent I could hear Nolan breathing. Vanessa's tried one final lie. I never saw that document. Celia clicked to the next exhibit, a scan record uploaded from Vanessa's office printer, time-stamped, linked to her login. Then another exhibit, the text to Nolan. If something happens before the hearing, the medical paper gives us breathing room. The judge's face hardened. Even lawyers know when a corpse has entered the room. Then came the digital picture frame. That was Vanessa's own weapon. Celia's investigator found the camera after Grace remembered Vanessa always adjusting that frame toward the kitchen table. The cheerful little frame on my kitchen counter, the one she had given me for Christmas, had a hidden camera built into the casing. Vanessa had placed it there, hoping to catch me confused, angry, or unstable. Instead, the camera had recorded her and Nolan the night before the kitchen meeting. Vanessa's voice came through clear. If Arthur fights, use the DNA first. It will break him. Nolan's voice followed. What if it breaks Grace? Vanessa answered. Then she learns early that family is leverage. Grace did not cry. That was worse. Then Nolan's voice again. I don't want Dad destroyed. Vanessa laughed. You don't want him destroyed. You want him useful. There's a difference. I had always hated that digital frame. Turns out I was right. Any machine that shows me my own face before coffee cannot be trusted. Finally, Celia presented the tin box, the photographs, the ledger page. Eleanor's note. Arthur, if you ever need to prove she was real, that note was not evidence in the neat way lawyers prefer. It was something worse. It was proof that my wife had spent her final years living beside a secret I had been too cowardly to uncover. The judge looked at the ledger page for a long time. Then she looked at me. Mr. Whitaker, she said, is that your badge number? Celia turned slightly toward me. She had prepared me for this. Still, preparation is not the same as standing there with your shame dressed in black ink. Yes, I said. My voice sounded old. Not sharp, not clever, just old. I took money from Silas Voss, once 35 years ago. I spent the rest of my life pretending once was small. The room was silent. Grace's hand stayed in mine. That is the only reason I kept speaking. It was not small. Vanessa watched me with a strange expression. For the first time, she seemed almost satisfied, like she had finally dragged my dirt into the light. But dirt is a funny thing. Once it is in the light, you can stop carrying it alone. The judge ordered a recess. Nobody moved for several seconds. When we stepped into the hallway, Nolan approached Grace. Grace, please. She stood beside me, small, straight-backed. Did you know about the DNA being fake? No. Did you know Mom was going to use it? He looked at the floor. I knew she had something. Grace nodded. Did you know about Grandma's signature? I didn't know she forged it. But you knew there was a paper. He closed his eyes. Grace said the sentence very softly. You knew enough. Then she walked away. That sentence did more to him than the judge. Because a court can punish a man, a child can define him. The conservatorship petition was denied. Protective orders were granted over my property, accounts, trust, and medical authority. The matter was referred for criminal investigation. The State Bar opened a review. The medical board opened another. Crown Ridge Recovery Group became the subject of a civil action so large it needed its own conference room. Vanessa did not cry. People like Vanessa rarely cry when they lose. They calculate appeals. But the worst thing for her was not losing. It was being seen. Her family story, the one where my house was theft, and Mara was trouble, and Voss was the wronged man, had cracked open in public. She walked out of the courtroom with her cream suit perfect and her face empty. I had seen that look before, on suspects, on widows, on men who realized too late that their version of life had stopped working. Nolan cried enough for both of them, but he was not spared. That was the hardest part. Not legally, emotionally. Celia placed the papers in front of me a week later. You can soften the civil filing against Nolan, she said. Or you can let the record show exactly what he signed, what he knew, and when he knew it. What happens if the record shows it? He loses trust access permanently. Your business guarantee can be revoked. His creditors may accelerate. The divorce court will see his role. Grace's custody preference will carry more weight. I looked at Nolan's signature. A father knows his son's handwriting, even when it is used as a weapon. File it, I said. Celia watched me. Are you sure? No, I said, but I am done rescuing him from the shape of his own choices. So she filed. 2 days later, Nolan came to my door. He looked like a man who had slept in his clothes. I opened it, but did not invite him in. Dad, please, no. They're calling the loan. Yes, I'll lose the business. You used my house as your backup plan without asking me. He pressed his hand to his forehead. I didn't know Vanessa had gone that far. You knew where you hoped the road ended. His eyes filled. Grace won't talk to me. That is not my punishment. That is hers. Please, I can't lose everything. I looked at him for a long time. Then I said the cruelest, honest thing I have ever said to my son. You were comfortable when I was the one losing everything. He stepped back like I had hit him. Maybe I had. With fathers, words can leave bruises where hands never touched. I'm your son, he whispered. Yes, I said, and that is why you are still standing on the porch, instead of speaking to me through an attorney. I closed the door. Then I leaned against it until my knees stopped trembling. Do not let anyone tell you. Cold revenge does not hurt the person holding it. It does. It burned all the way down. Vanessa pled months later. Reduced charges, fraud-related counts, cooperation against Crown Ridge, no noble confession, no tears worth believing. Just survival. Crown Ridge Recovery Group collapsed under investigation, but not all at once. The first lawsuit came from an 81-year-old widow in Akron, then a retired teacher in Dayton. Then 3 siblings from Columbus, who had spent 6 years believing their mother had simply signed away her home. By the time local news called it a pattern, Crown Ridge had already started eating itself. Elliot Voss was not dragged out in handcuffs like people imagine. Men with money do not fall dramatically. They leak, accounts frozen, partners leaving, civil suits multiplying, reporters calling, banks reassessing, old files reopening. His name became expensive to stand near. Pierce Alden lost his license. I saw him once outside the courthouse, smoking with one shaking hand. He looked at me. I looked at his cigarette. Those will kill you, I said. He laughed bitterly. So will your lawyer. Mine works faster. He did not laugh after that. Nolan lost his business. Not immediately. That would have been cleaner. He lost it slowly. First the credit line, then the lease, then the employees, then the website went dark. Then one morning he stood outside the building he had spent 10 years pretending to own and watched a locksmith change the front door. His old receptionist carried out a box of office mugs while pretending not to see him. That is the kind of mercy people offer when they are embarrassed for you. The sign with his name came down before noon. By evening, there was only a pale rectangle on the brick where he used to believe he mattered. I know because Celia sent me the notice. I folded it and put it in the red folder, not to enjoy it. To remember that consequences are real only when recorded. 2 months after that, Nolan asked to see me. I refused twice. The third time, Grace asked me to let him come. Not because I forgive him, she said. Then why? Because I want to see if he lies when he has nothing left to gain. That child scared me sometimes. In the best way. Nolan came on a rainy Thursday. No suit, no folder, no wife. He looked thinner, older, and less handsome. Failure had removed the polish from him. Sometimes that is the beginning of a man. Sometimes it is only the beginning of self-pity. We sat at the kitchen table. He stared at the place where the petition had been. I lost the business, he said. I know. Vanessa is taking whatever is left. I know. Grace hates me. No, I said. She distrusts you. Do not flatter yourself by calling every consequence hate. He nodded. He deserved that. I don't know how to fix this. You don't fix it. He looked up. You live differently until the truth stops sounding like a performance. His eyes filled. I was angry at you. I know, because you always had something left. Money, the house, Mom's memory, Grace's respect. Even when you were old, you still had weight. That was honest. Ugly, but honest. And when Vanessa showed me the DNA test, I wanted it to be true. That one hurt. I let it. Why? Because if you weren't my father, then I didn't have to feel guilty for hating you. I looked at him. There he was, not forgiven, but visible. Then he said something I did not expect. You always forgave me like a judge reducing a sentence, Nolan said. Never like a father who believed I could be better. I wanted to deny it. I could not. Some accusations arrive wearing enough truth to get through the door. I looked at the kitchen window because looking at him was too much. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I kept paying your fines because I was too afraid to let you meet yourself. He stared at me. I stared at the window. Eleanor's basil pots were gone now, but the sills still had faint rings where they used to sit. I helped make you weak, I said. He cried then. So did I, though less obviously. Old men cry inward. It is not healthier, just quieter. I'm sorry, he said. This time the words had weight, not enough to rebuild anything, but enough to mark the ground. I believe you, I said. His face softened. But you are not returning to the trust. You are not touching my accounts. You are not making decisions for me. You will not inherit this house, and Grace will see you only on her terms. He closed his eyes. I understand. No, I said. You are beginning to. Then I slid one paper across the table, a copy of my revised will. Nolan read it. His mouth tightened. $1, he whispered. Yes, that's all. No, I said. That is the only part with your name on it. He kept reading. The house would not go to him, not directly to Grace either. After my death, the property would become the first residence under the Maribel Legal Shelter Fund, providing temporary housing and legal support for elderly people, fighting predatory conservatorships and property theft. Grace would have the right to oversee the fund when she turned 25 if she chose. Nolan set the paper down. You're giving the house away. No, I said. I'm returning it to its purpose. He looked toward the pantry wall, at Grace's height marks, at the little pencil lines rising year by year. His face twisted. I destroyed my place here, yes. Can I ever earn one again? I thought about that. Then I answered honestly, I don't know. He nodded. That was the first time he accepted an answer without asking me to soften it. Progress can be very small. The sealed box from evidence storage arrived 3 weeks later. Celia brought it herself. We opened it at my kitchen table. Inside were Mara's original documents, a hospital bracelet, a yellow baby blanket, and a letter addressed to me. The paper had aged. So had I. Celia sat across from me, both hands folded so tightly, her knuckles whitened. I read the letter aloud only where she asked me to. Mara wrote that she was scared, that she knew Voss had men inside the courthouse, that she did not blame Eleanor, that she hoped her daughter would grow up somewhere with windows. Then the last line stopped me. Arthur, if the house survives, let it become shelter again. Not a prize. I could not speak for a while. Celia cried silently. Grace, who had come downstairs halfway through, stood behind my chair and placed one hand on my shoulder. But the box under the laundry floor had held one more thing. A smaller envelope. Eleanor's handwriting. My name on the front, Arthur. For 5 years after her death, I thought I had heard the last of my wife's voice. I was wrong. Inside was a letter she had written during her final month, when the cancer had made her thin but not gentle. Eleanor had never been gentle when truth was required. That was one of the reasons I loved her, and one of the reasons I occasionally considered hiding in the garage. The letter said she knew Nolan was weak in the way loved men can become weak. She wrote that I had saved him too often. She wrote that she had done it too. Then came the sentence that broke me cleanly. Arthur, if our son ever asks you to choose between saving him and saving what is right, do not save him. A man who can only survive inside his father's mercy has not become a man. I put the letter down. My hands were shaking then. No point pretending otherwise. Grace read it after me. Then Celia. Nobody spoke. That was when I finally understood the real shape of revenge. It was not Nolan losing money. It was not Vanessa losing freedom. It was not Elliot Voss watching his empire rot from the edges. Those were consequences, necessary ones. But the real answer was the house, making sure the thing they tried to steal became the one thing their kind could never touch again. Vanessa sent me one letter before sentencing. 3 pages, 2 fonts, not one honest sentence. I have seen grocery coupons with more moral courage. She wrote that she had only wanted security. She wrote that I had manipulated Nolan. She wrote that Grace would understand one day. I burned the letter in the kitchen sink. Grace watched. Is that legal? She asked. At my age, sweetheart, I ration my crimes carefully. She laughed, a real laugh, the first one in months. That felt better than victory. But do not misunderstand me. I did not become soft. I did not forgive everyone. I did not gather the family around a table and pretend betrayal becomes wisdom just because time passes. Some days, I still set out 2 mugs, mine and Eleanor's. 5 years dead, and my hand still reaches for hers. There is no dignity in grief, only habit. Nolan still comes by sometimes. He brings groceries, fixes a hinge, cleans the gutters. He does not call it helping. I do not call it forgiveness. We are both learning the value of accurate language. Grace still stays with me most weekends. She still marks her height on the pantry wall even though she is too old for it, and I am too sentimental to stop her. One Saturday, she found the old yellow blanket folded in the red folder. She touched it gently. Grandpa? Yes. Do you think bad things can become good things? I looked around the kitchen. At the cracked tile. At Eleanor's basil window. At the table where a lawyer once tried to erase me. At the laundry room door, where a floorboard had held the truth longer than I had. No, I said, bad things stay bad. But sometimes we build something good beside them so they don't get the last word. She nodded. Then she picked up a pencil and made a new mark on the pantry wall, a little higher than the last one. Life, being rude and stubborn, continued. Last week, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table alone. For the first time in years, I felt Eleanor there. Not as a ghost, as a witness. I opened the red folder one last time. Inside were the deed, Mara's photograph, the revised trust, the yellow blanket, the false DNA report, the forged medical directive with Eleanor's impossible signature, the hidden camera transcript, the ledger page from under the laundry floor, and the court order denying my son the right to call me incompetent. I added one final note. For Grace, I taped it to the inside cover. It said, when someone tells you family means silence, open the folder. When someone tells you blood matters more than love, read the DNA twice. When someone uses your kindness as a key, change the locks. When someone signs a dead woman's name, make sure the living remember it. And when someone comes into your kitchen with papers proving you are too old, too weak, or too broken to fight, pour coffee first. Let them sit. Let them speak. Let them mistake your patience for decay. Then show them what an old man remembered.